Morning, guys. Okay, so yesterday we started our immigration book, and I was so impressed by your cover pages and your table of contents and your introduction. They were awesome. I really enjoyed looking at them. You guys followed directions really nicely. My only tip is to go back and spell check, make sure you indented in your introduction, make sure all of your chapters start with a capital letter, make sure your title starts with a capital letter, but we can always go back and fix that. So you started with your cover page, your table of contents, and your introduction, which had a hook and kind of shared with readers what your book will be about. So today we are going to write chapter 1. So before I do that, I'm going to go back to my immigration project slides. You need these because here was my topic, and these were my 1, 2, 3, 4 research questions. And then this is going to be my first chapter. Where, when, and why did the potato famine begin? So this is my chapter after my introduction. Where, when, and why did it begin? So I'm going to use all of these notes, but I'm going to put them in paragraph form, and I'm going to expand and explain. I'm trying to be a teacher. I want you to think of yourself as a teacher. You are teaching your audience, whoever's reading this, all about your topic. So you have to pretend like they know nothing about it. So you've got to do a lot of detailed explaining to get them to understand and learn this new information. So I have my bullet points. Irish immigrants came because of the potato famine between 1845 and 1850. Many Irish people worked on farms and only grew potatoes as their food. From 1845 to 1850, most of the potatoes were destroyed by a disease called blight. Many people starved because food prices went up and they could not afford food. The government tried to help but did not pay them enough to buy food. Many Irish ended up homeless with no hope of gaining food or shelter. So I'm going to use this, and I already wrote chapter 1, so I will read it to you. So I renamed it. Instead of writing where, when, and why did it begin, I changed it to the history of potatoes in Ireland. In the early 1800s, people in Ireland relied on potatoes for most of their food source. Most Irish farmer workers worked for the English landlords and therefore did not have much time to grow food for themselves. Irish farm workers had very little time to work on their own crops, so they grew a lot of potatoes, which were cheap and could grow with little work. However, in 1845, many of the potatoes suffered from a disease called blight. Blight is when the potatoes begin to rot and die. Since potatoes make up the majority of food for the Irish during this time, people began to starve. In the book, The Disaster of the Irish Potato Famine, it says prices for other food went up. This shows me that the poor farmers in Ireland could not afford to buy any food, and many people began to starve. Due to the high cost of food and trouble growing potatoes, this caused, I can check it as I go. This caused many people to leave Ireland and find a new home. So I am fully explaining what happened, why potatoes were an important crop, what happened to the potatoes, what blight meant. And I even took from the book. So I took a direct quote, but in order to take a direct quote, I had to name the book. Up here, this was from a website. Anything you take directly, you know that you have to put in quotations, and that's fine to do. So look at your sources to find where you got that information from. You are going to have to go back to those books at times to say the name of it, to do a direct quote, to refer to it. So I also, after I put that quote, I said, this shows me that the poor farmers in Ireland could not afford to buy any food, and many people began to starve. So just like your literary essay, you write text evidence and then you prove it with your own words. So what you're going to do is take your first research question, turn it into a chapter with lots of explanation and detail. So if you are doing famous immigrants, maybe your first slide was just about who some famous immigrants are. You can list a bunch of famous immigrants in your first chapter. That's fine, but you need to do a little bit of explaining. Or maybe is just about your first immigrant. So you can talk all about your first immigrant, who they are, where they came from, and then chapter 2 could be the next immigrant you researched. If you're doing immigration from Italy, Europe, France, Denmark, you can talk about in your first chapter whatever it is your first research question was. If you're doing Angel Island or Ellis Island, this would be a good time for the history of Ellis Island or Angel Island. But remember, you are the teacher. You need to use facts and your own words to get this person who's reading this to completely understand your topic. So you are just working on chapter 1 today, but that means I want you to spend a good amount of time working on it, making sure you really explained it. Maybe read it to someone who doesn't know much about your topic, see if they can tell you anything that they learned, or maybe they have questions that can get you to push even further. Good luck. Can't wait to read them.